going on, everybody? Welcome back for another episode here on the MCU Re-Viewed. We've got a wonderful show for you today, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking Captain America, the First Avenger. John. Oh, man. All right, Del, what do you got?
I got Marvel. I have Ragnarok, so I dropped the ball there. I apologize.
You didn't drop the ball. You're never wrong for representing Thor Ragnarok.
No.
It's all good.
Absolutely.
We've got the usual crew here today. Episode 5, guys, week 5. So we're making some progress here. MCU is heating up. I'm Josiah Leroy. With me, as always, Disruptoid himself, John Fick. John, how you doing today?
So there's like probably a trillion Funko Pops, but this is, I think, objectively the best Funko Pop. There's a million of them, there's a trillion of them, but this is the best one. World War II Cap, come on. That's so cool.
That is a good one.
I'm well.
No doubt about it.
Doing all right.
Got the shield and everything.
Oh, yeah.
The Platinum King himself, Rashawn Anderson. Rashawn, how are you today?
I'm great. What's going on, everybody? Talking some Captain America today. I've been waiting for this episode. I mean, I wait for every episode, but especially for Cap. Let's do it.
Listen, we had a lot of Geekiverse members want to be a part of this, and unfortunately, we only have the 4 seats here, the 4 virtual seats. But we want everyone to get in the conversation.
MCU is such a topic, man. It's a hot topic. I don't blame them.
And the show's heating up too. As always, our show is presented by the wonderful folks over at Fantastic, division of 26 shirts. So joining us is now Geekiverse veteran, Del Reed. Del, you're looking great in your Ragnarok shirt.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I am very happy to be a part of another one of these rewatches. I have such a good time with you guys. Thank you for having me.
Well, we have a great time with you, too. Always a good discussion. As we mentioned today, it's Captain America, the First Avenger. So, last pre-Avengers movie here. The last origin story in Phase 1 here. Let's talk about a little bit about the film, first reactions, how many times you've seen it in theaters, all of the above. John, we'll start right with you.
Yeah, fun movie, man. I feel like most of these origin stories, I like them more the more I watch them. Where I think like before rewatching this Captain America yesterday, I was like, okay, it's Cap, it's the beginning, it's a slower movie, it's whatever, I'll get through it. I was kind of thinking about it in the same light that I thought of Thor in, but I think that I like this a lot better. I had a lot more fun with it. I think that has to do a lot to do with the fact that like Cap has really become like my favorite Avenger. I think, not because of this movie, of course. It was not his best showing, but it was good. It was a fun rewatch.
Rashawn.
Hey, time out, John. I thought you were an Iron Man guy.
Hey, man, people grow, people change.
I mean, you could be both, but I was looking forward to us having a little, banter with Civil War. But
I might flip. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm on his side for Civil War or not. Who knows?
I can't wait for that one. Let me tell you right now, because more so than like just the rankings at the end, that one's gonna get crazy with like Team Cap and Team Iron Man. Because I'll tell you what, in the lead up to that movie, the Geekiverse was pretty divided.
I was prepared to light John up, so that's why I'm like, hey, he's a Cap guy. I don't know. We'll see if he flip flop.
I might.
We'll see.
Yeah, man. But for me, first impression with Captain America, the First Avenger, man, where do I start? For me, I guess just to get it out there, like. Last week I mentioned with Thor, the one thing I was nervous about with that when they announced that is how cheesy it would be. And I also mentioned a hint that I was going to give out in terms of there were 2 superheroes that I really just quite frankly despised as a kid because I just didn't get them. Thor was one of them, like we talked about last week. And I lied, there's actually 3. The second one is Superman. The third one is Captain America. And the way all 3 have been portrayed on screen for me have made me grow to love those characters. We'll talk about Superman another day because people are probably like, what? We'll talk about that another day. But for Captain America, man, what they did with Chris Evans' rendition of this is amazing. This made Captain America from the Justice America, freedom. Like it took it from that shtick back in the day to like, oh no, like Captain America is actually like awesome. So I can't wait to get into this.
We'll talk about Superman more once we get finally to the DCEU reviewed, right? Maybe we'll talk about it in a few months.
But it would be brutal.
No thanks.
Yeah, probably. So, Del, thoughts on Captain America: The First Avenger.
I love this movie. I love it. And while it didn't make Cap my favorite, my Avenger, which he is now, I think it took a little while for me to get there. I absolutely love this movie. I think it's so great the way that they position him and his personality, because it's such a tough thing, because he's like Superman, so much about truth, justice, the American way, kind of. That's his whole motif, and it just if they were to try to bring him into like introduce him in this time period, that we live in now, I think he'd come off like really like jingoist or corny. But the way that they're able to work him in to the World War II timeline, which obviously that's where he came from originally anyways, but I just think it works so well. This was such a tough thing for the movie makers to get right, and it had been tried a couple times in the past, maybe just once in the past, I don't know, maybe those were made for TV movie or something, but it was always cheesy. Like Captain America was cheesy, but they just did such a great service to who Steve Rogers is and why he is the way he is. I love this movie, and I'm going to gush about it for the next hour. I'm just warning you.
You're not alone. Yeah, I think overall Marvel did a really nice job with taking characters like Captain America and Thor in particular, as we mentioned, and establishing them as, I guess, not totally abandoning their cheesy selves, but finding a good way to kind of curb it and make it cool.
Yeah, and ground them a little bit too. Like that, I think that was the first thing I was thinking of when Dell was talking about, like, we kind of have reasons for why Cap is so like all American and so into justice. Like they ground it with that desire to want to participate in World War II and want to serve for his country. It just feels right.
Yeah, I think it does. This movie, we'll get into some of the box office stuff in just a moment, but I saw this in theaters, and again, got my dad to thank, because he wanted to go see this. So my MCU love really stems from my dad wanting to see this movie. So we saw it as kind of, especially at that time, almost this standalone experience. It was an introduction for me, who was not previously into comics really at all, and love the way the character was portrayed. And really, it's funny that this was only the true beginning for what would be just absolute stardom on a different level for someone like Chris Evans, who I would argue this is one of the best superhero castings ever. And I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Not even a question. Yeah, one of them.
So in terms of the release and box office, this came out in 2011. July, was it, John?
I don't have it up, but I think it was July or June. It was a summer movie for sure.
And do you have any of the box office numbers?
Yeah, it did $370 million, which is good. Nothing to be shy about. It's good numbers, but I was shocked to see that Thor actually outdid Captain America in the box office. We said last week Thor did $449, and Cap did only $370. So like that's
very surprising.
You think about I wonder if it's just because Cap is so in the zeitgeist and we're so he is the leader of the Avengers, and those movies have been so successful, and we're kind of we're really into Cap now. So I wonder if maybe we're just not really thinking from the lens of 2011.
I think it was the Chris Hemsworth fangirls that made up that almost extra 100 million.
That's possible.
Both great Chris's.
And this was also, release date was also July 22nd, 2011, by the way. But yeah, definitely summer. I think maybe that's why. I wonder what other movies were out around this time.
Yeah. Weird.
That's a question, of course, that could be answered another day. But I wonder if that had anything to do with that.
It could have.
Blockbusters.
It's funny because I remember seeing that movie, and I think a lot of people were in the same boat as me. It was, relatively new to loving Marvel, or really just liking Marvel at that point, and saying, "Hey, this movie looks interesting. I'm going to go see it." Obviously, now they could just be like, Marvel could be like Captain America 4, and everyone would be like, "I'm buying tickets right now." But different times in 2011.
What was didn't they give a fake name for the third Captain America movie at one point when they were doing their unveiling of Phase 3? Maybe it was Phase 2. I forgot how the phases work. But it
was originally, it was Civil War was originally, it was called Captain America
Serpent Society. That was never the real name. That was just like that. They literally just showed that at the beginning of the keynote and kind of mapped out, as they do, what the next couple of years would be. So Captain America Serpent Society popped up, and literally 10 minutes later they took it back and said, "Nope, just kidding, Civil War."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't remember that actually, which is pretty funny.
That keynote's awesome. You should watch that. It's awesome.
That was one of the best presentations.
Yeah.
Like there was just so much hype behind that.
Is that SDCC that you're talking about?
No, it was just like this thing where Marvel was like, hey, it's a random Tuesday and this is happening today. We're going to show you our entire slate of movies for the next like 6 years. Came out of nowhere.
Yeah, it was just a big Marvel thing. It was at Hall H, if I'm remembering correctly. I could be wrong on that, but I just remember, yeah, it was just a random thing. It wasn't a specialized,
it was cool,
thing.
It's a fun watch.
Yeah.
It's on YouTube, the whole thing. It's worth the watch for sure.
You guys want to queue up the original trailer for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Let's get that trailer going.
Rogers, Steven.
Just give me a chance.
Sorry, son. I'm saving your life.
General Patton has said that wars are fought with weapons, but they are won by men.
You just don't know when to give up, do you? I could do this all day.
Our goal is to create the greatest army in history.
I should be going with you. Look, I know you don't think I can do this.
This isn't a back alley, Steve. It's war.
But every army begins with one man.
5 tries in 5 different cities. I can offer you a chance.
He will be the first in a new breed of super soldiers.
Why me?
Because the weak men knows the value of strength, knows the value of power.
That wasn't so bad.
That was penicillin.
We are going to win this war because we have the best men.
Now, Mr. Stark.
Nay, will personally escort Adolf Hitler to the gates of hell.
How do you feel?
Your task won't be simple.
Who the hell are you? The first of many.
Your enemy is not what you expect.
I don't know if I can do this.
This is why you were chosen.
What do you think?
I think it works.
All right, what do we think?
I want to go watch the movie again after seeing that.
Seriously.
That's by far the best trailer that we reviewed so far.
No doubt,
Oh my
that's
God.
the same feeling I got. I just want to watch that movie again. I was surprised that they revealed Red Skull in the trailer. It seemed like that was something they built up pretty well in the movie. I don't know. I don't remember seeing that trailer beforehand and knowing that Red Skull was going to make like a full like face reveal appearance. So I remember that being a pretty cool moment the first time we saw him.
It's funny because I don't remember as I'm sitting watching this trailer seeing it back in 2011, but I must have because I went and saw the movie and I know that my dad and I were hyped to see it. So yeah, it's interesting. We talked about the evolution of trailers as we went on here, and this did a nice job of building up slowly right from the beginning and kind of even almost chronologically telling a little bit of the story that we were going to see. So
Yep.
thought it did a good job. It's so we'll get into this a little bit more. So jarring seeing little Chris Evans
Oh, I know.
after seeing what we've seen for the last 5-6 movies.
And I do have a note in there that CGI hasn't aged as well as I wanted it to. And the more it's one of those things, the more you look at it, the more you notice it. Like that's a tough thing. I think even in 2020, that's a tough thing to pull off for like, was it 30 minutes of a movie at least? It doesn't crush it for me. Like when I see it, I kind of just forget about it and just suspension my disbelief for a little while.
That's so funny you say that because in my notes I have the Steve effects still hold up.
Yeah.
And then we're watching the trailer. They come out right with it, like, here's our CG work, and I don't know, it works well enough for me. I don't know. I think it does pretty well.
Yeah, it definitely gets. It's not distracting. Like it's to the point where like it definitely gets the job done, and it's not too much. But when you start to look at it, is when you can really see the seams. And I'm one of those guys who, when I see a movie in the theaters, I do not notice CGI. Like I am just in it for the theater. I don't even think twice about that. I never think about CGI. But then when I rewatch a movie on my home TV, for whatever reason, I'm like looking intently, and I'm kind of picking up on that stuff. One of the other things we'll talk about later in the series is Black Panther. Like Black Panther, the final fight is apparently like classic awful CGI. It looks like just two rubber bands fighting each other, and I never noticed that in the theater when I watched it. But if you watch it now, you can definitely see what people are mad about.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I feel like in the theater, it's almost like this equalizer of sorts, whereas I'm not paying attention as much, or maybe I'm just not seeing the visuals how I want to. Then I get home, whether it's the 4K, the Blu-ray, digital release, and maybe it's just because we have better setups almost at home. But you watch that and you can really pick apart nice visuals, mediocre ones, not so good ones, especially as time goes on.
For sure.
So I kind of feel like that's a thing. Rashawn, you had some other thoughts on the trailer.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, just a quick fact check on my part. That thing that John and I were talking about, that was at the El Capitan Theater. I don't know where the heck I got Hall H from. So I just wanted to fact check that when they unveiled 4 years worth of content. That was awesome.
Yeah, I looked that up too. It was October 29th, 2014. It was like the same day they just announced, hey, we're doing a presentation in like a couple hours. All these journalists are invited. Stay tuned. And they unveiled Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Thor Ragnarok, Black Panther, Infinity War Part 1 and 2, Captain Marvel, Inhumans, and Avengers Infinity War Part 2. So 1 and 2. So they unveiled all of those in one day without like any prep. It was insane.
Yeah, literally best day to be a nerd. But anyway, in terms of the trailer, yeah, man, this trailer. Now, the thing for me is this is when I really get to truly remembering the trailers. A couple of the other ones I remember watching, just little snippets from them, but like from the start to finish, this is where I start remembering a lot of these trailers. And I just remember seeing this for the first time and being like, they're making a movie about this Captain America guy, man. Oh my gosh. I'm like, this is going to be terrible. What, blah, blah, blah. And I think one of the things that goes into that box office score too, that drop that we see, I think is because not necessarily people felt the same way as me, but I think when you think, oh, Thor, God of Thunder, right? Chris Hemsworth, word of mouth probably spread. You think about Incredible Hulk, you think about Iron Man, right? Then you think about Captain America, and to the general public before Chris Evans' rendition, just to do with the shield. Like, yeah. And he talks about the American way, like what is interesting about that. At least the other guys, you can pick something right away that's interesting. With Cap, you just like, oh, he has a shield that he throws.
Yeah, Cap was basically just Marvel's Superman with less cool powers, basically. That's how I always thought of Cap.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of probably what went into that difference. I can't put myself in that, like that timepiece where it's like not being excited for a Captain America. It's so hard to think of a time where Cap wasn't like this.
Right. It's hard to kind of think about now, especially a year later you had Avengers, and that just skyrocketed everything in the MCU, all of these heroes. And, it made people interested on a whole new level. And it's to the point, like, if you fast forward ahead to Infinity War and Endgame and how attached people got to these characters, probably including the four of us, and, shedding tears at happy moments and not so happy moments in some of those movies. Kind of amazing that we care that much about them. But it's just a testament to Marvel, story development, character development, and all the actors that portrayed these characters. It's just unbelievable to think about. Why don't we... Well, let me ask you, do you guys want to jump into favorite non-Captain America character, or do you want to go through just some of my notes that I had?
Go through your notes.
Let's see, see what you got.
So this will maybe spur on some good conversation here. I probably had the most notes of any of the movies we've watched so far, just kind of, jumping through everything. But in particular, in this rewatch of the MCU, more than ever, I'm looking for it, but I can't believe how many little story moments stemmed in these origin movies, or how many little Easter eggs are there, and weren't there just for fan service, but were there all the years later when we got into the sequels and the Avengers movies. It's truly remarkable. Early in the movie, they mention the quote unquote the jewel of Odin's treasure room when talking about the Tesseract. Very nice tie-in. The other thing is how nicely they tried to tie all these superheroes together before Avengers that I wasn't looking for when I originally saw these movies. But in hindsight, looking back, it's kind of amazing how many times Marvel would give a wink to Thor in a movie like this, or in Iron Man tease Captain America. It's really quite impressive.
Yeah, that's stuff that there's no way that I was catching the first time watching these movies. Like, it's a rewatch is really necessary for a franchise this long that's been planting that many seeds.
Now, Del, I do have a question for you, because you were probably a comic book fan more so than we were before you saw some of these movies. Would you say, looking at Captain America or Iron Man, any of these movies we've seen so far, that you felt like you recognized a lot of these smaller details or Easter eggs? It's probably hard to say without the hindsight of the Avengers movies.
Yeah, I'll be transparent. No, I missed a lot of that stuff. You know, my comic times were in the 80s and 90s, and so like fast forwarding 20 years, I'm missing lots of references. And I was never a big Cap guy in the comics. I was always off put just by how corny he came off to me. But yeah, I haven't seen too many things. I'm like, oh my gosh. But John, to your point, you talk about all the Easter eggs that we didn't know that they were putting, all the little nods that we didn't realize. It's kind of fun to think, okay, well, what did they put in Captain Marvel that's going to take us a couple years to realize?
Yeah.
Or what did they put in Black Panther? I want to think that they're continuing to do that, which makes those movies even more exciting to think about how much more they're going to be realized in the years to come.
That's a great point. You just got me real excited.
I put just a question here, and I said, what villain problem? Because if we remember back to those days around the release of the Avengers, it was always Marvel has a villain problem, and people are always writing about that. And I think it was only because maybe they were comparing some of what we saw in the early MCU to DC in their movies. Obviously, DCEU was not around yet, but at that point, what we had gotten in those movies and TV shows and comics, the villains were always very strong. And looking back, like, I don't think that Marvel really had a true villain problem. They got better as time went on, no doubt about it. But I wouldn't say it was necessarily a problem. Red Skull's a nice villain for a movie like this, I think. And it makes it even all the more cooler to see that throw in to Infinity War and Endgame all those years later. So like when we see him essentially kind of wrestling with the Tesseract towards the end of this movie, like the whole time I'm like looking to see like if I can see where he's being jettisoned off to.
Is Vormir
And I
there?
never paid attention to that.
Weaving's portrayal was great in my opinion as the Red Skull. It was so good in this for a lot of people that there was and it finally got confirmed. But there was fan theories for years that he didn't die, that he got teleported somewhere.
Yeah.
Even though it kind of looked that way, they could have easily written it as, oh, he died. And for the longest time, that's what it seemed to be. And people asked for his character to come back, and mainly him, for a while. And, complications happened with that. But I kind of agree with you, Joe, but I also do see what a lot of those people were talking about, because I was one of those people. But going back and watching now, I'm kind of like, maybe I'm just desensitized to it at the moment, because because you got to think, these MCU movies came out right after The Dark Knight, or at least that time, and everything after. So every villain is being compared in that like 3 to 5 year span. Every villain's being compared to the Heath Ledger's Joker. Yeah. So of course every villain seems weak in comparison.
And that's really true.
I think this movie benefits so much from the hindsight of Infinity War, because I remember specifically watching this movie for the first couple of times. My biggest takeaway was always the third act really falls apart. And I think that climax with that fight was always just so jarring, and to me just very anticlimactic, where they're kind of just like mid-fight and then he grabs a Tesseract and he's just gone. But now that we have that context, and I would say that's probably more of a retcon than something that they planned. And we see him on Vormir, and so Red Skull's back. That's a really cool moment for Infinity War. That was always a pretty jarring ending for me in terms of just that final boss fight. Or I keep using video game terms for these movies, boss fight. But I mean, it works now. Now that we're post Infinity War, it's fun to watch and see like, oh, okay, that's how Red Skull gets there. But I do remember watching that and be like, that was weird.
Hugo Weaving's presence is really nice in this movie. One of my favorite moments is how he says schedule. I don't know why that always sticks out to me.
That German accent.
So when we were eating dinner tonight, I was like, "Hey, come on, let's sit down, Daisy. I'm on a tight schedule." Next note I had rough CG on pre-Serum Rogers. Sorry, Dell.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All good.
It's all good. Speaking of video games, John, because you said boss fight, and you keep mentioning other terms here. I put that I love the old school period aesthetics.
Oh man,
such as the movie theater that we see.
I think the whole 40s theme was just crushed. It was absolutely done like just perfectly in this movie.
It felt when I see the movie theater, for whatever reason, it reminds me of BioShock.
Oh yeah.
So if you played BioShock, I'm like, oh man,
I think for me, in some ways, I was kind of engineered to end up liking this movie regardless, only because I'm a big World War II guy. Like World War II movies, learning about it, whether it's the U.S. history part, the world history part, I've always been into all of that. So, of course, if you make a good World War II movie at the end of the day, and then you just drop a superhero in it, you're asking for me to like the movie. So...
Oh, I'm in the same boat. I've always been a history buff to a degree, and that helps with this, or helped originally when I saw it in 2011.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good, Del.
I was going to say none of us were alive in the 40s, but World War II, we've all learned so much about it, either through school or movies or whatever. So even though none of us were alive then, this movie feels like how 1942 or whatever year it was supposed to, how we all imagine it to be, right? And so it was very easy to slide into, believability there. And I think they did an awesome job with the aesthetic. And I loved the future aesthetics. Like what did the future technology in 1940 look like?
Yeah, that alternate history that's really cool.
Yeah, with just the pod that they used to like inject him with the serum, like everything until you get to the Tesseract weapons. But everything else looks exactly like you would imagine high technology to look like in 1942.
Seeing the weapons that the soldiers used, seeing some of the aviation was awesome. Even like you mentioned, Del, when they're really injecting the serum into Rogers, when Stark like his console, I love that switchboard, all of it. That is just, it's a nice job, and I think you nailed it. Like it's how we would have all imagined it to be.
There's one thing that bothers me about that scene. I hate in movies the cliche that when computers malfunction they start sparking. I hate that, and that stands out to me every time I rewatch this movie. I'm just like, all right, they're overloading, so the keyboard is sparking. That makes a lot of sense.
They were drawing on the power grid, though. They were pulling from the whole New York City power grid.
They sure were. Right? And we saw, we got a visual representation of that for sure.
I'll be honest, if that stereotype with John's talking about is real, I would have been dead a long time ago.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. Every time someone claps and I get out of existence in these videos, my keyboard is sparking.
Oh, does it?
It just happened.
Yeah.
One more. It just does.
One more thing to touch on, we're sort of in that area, is one of the other things I didn't really like in terms of like the vibe and the setting. Some of the bigger set pieces, especially the indoor stuff, and this is more of another CGI issue. They just felt very empty. A lot of those big hangars where Hydra was doing their stuff, they just felt like very, very empty. That they didn't really kind of fill in a lot of the stuff there. One of the standout scenes for me is when Red Skull's giving like his speech to those Hydra, all of his drones or whatever, and they all like salute him at the exact same time, and it is a very clearly like copy and paste CGI in this very, very empty like hangar. And that's really the only nitpick I have about the setting and the vibe. It just didn't click.
Makes sense. So speaking of the technology, I love that we essentially have what becomes the Stark Expo. They don't call it the Stark Expo. I don't remember. World Exploration.
Was it the World Fair?
Yeah, it might have been that.
The World Fair was a real thing. Maybe I'm getting it confused with the real thing.
Something tomorrow. World of Tomorrow, maybe. Either way, I love that. I'm watching this movie, and even later in the movie, Barnes and Rogers just interacting with Howard Stark, just a little bit ironic to me. Obviously, for what we see in Civil War, with them really butting heads with his son all those decades later. Just a little bit that I liked.
It's cool seeds that are planted about like Tony being jealous of his father's relationship with Cap, because you can really see Howard Stark like take, like really, I don't know if it was like a father-son dynamic. It definitely wasn't that, but he was definitely admirable to Steve Rogers
just in
throughout the
awe
movie.
of that creation.
Yeah, like he kind of went from that very Stark stereotype or like playboy, like looking to, just be that kind of guy, to just wanting to help this dude. Like you can tell he had a lot of respect for him, and you see that relationship progress.
And speaking of back to the 1940s point, how perfect is Howard Stark for that? Like, I think he nailed it. Kind of like that, what you'd imagine a playboy from that era to be like. Just how he talks to Agent Carter, even like kissing the girl on stage. It's just, it's funny.
Yeah, that line that he had on stage when the floating car doesn't work out. I said it was a few years away.
Yeah, and it's kind of a nice nod to Tony later on, just being better, right? Like being the natural evolution in the Stark family.
Yep.
Two quotes come to mind. "I can do this all day," from Rogers, becomes a classic line. He says it a few times in this movie, says it throughout some of the Captain America and Avengers movies later on. Also, "Don't do anything stupid till I get back," is a line that is repeated later on in the saga. Always love those callbacks. Last week, John, I believe you brought up that Thor was the first movie in which you kind of paid attention or were made aware of the music. So the musical score.
Yeah.
I think in this one, it is so iconic. Anytime something patriotic happens, right? Like that's Captain America's theme, kind of that low key, triumphant sound that we hear, and you hear it throughout the movies, and even when Cap makes appearances in some of the Avengers movies. It just, immediately, and it captures the total essence of the movie, and it's one of my favorite soundtracks in the entire MCU. I don't know if that stood out for anyone else.
Yeah, Alan Silvestri actually is the composer for this movie, and he did the Avengers movies as well too. So it's really seamless. I think that's maybe where some of the subconscious love that people get for Cap through the Avengers movies, and it just really hits for his movies and everything as well. I think it's great because I think in Iron Man, all the themes in the Iron Man movies, they're all different. I think they all had different composers, but with Alan Silvestri, he was used so much more in the MCU, and he's Alan Silvestri. He's like a really accomplished movie composer. So I just love it, and I'm sure that part of the reason I love Cap is his handiwork.
That's a great point. And Rashawn, consistency, seeing them not just do Captain America but do the Avengers movies later on. There's definitely a lot of the production team on the various Captain America movies that we'll get to that it stemmed from this, and they went on to do a lot of really neat stuff in the MCU. Rogers getting the flag when they're running, they're jogging, and he's the first one to capture that flag, so he gets the ride back, right? I love that he just beats the other guys by using his brain. And it's just a smug little way that he does it, and he gets that flag and hands it.
I love that he gets it, and then he just walks over, and he's just like, he just hands it over. He's not expecting, like anyone else would be like, oh, they're probably not gonna let me go. He just gets right on the truck and it just goes away. It's like, I don't got anything to say to y'all.
Yeah, and no one says anything to him, right? Yeah. Like, what do you say at that point? You got the flag. Right. They didn't say you had to climb the pole to get it.
They did a great job setting up why he was the one picked for that project with that flag scene, and then I don't know if you have it in your notes, but jumping on the grenade, the dummy grenade, stuff like that. They did a great job of setting up why he was the clear choice there.
The one thing I put in my notes that sums up why this made me appreciate the Captain America character just so much is when Tommy Lee Jones' character, the general, was talking to the scientist.
He's a colonel. Thank you very much.
Or colonel. So sorry. That matters actually.
Some people.
Yeah, I know, right? when they're having that conversation and he's like, oh, come on, like there's the one guy, he's just like, listen, he's a soldier, man, like why don't you pick him, he's a soldier. And Stanley Tucci's character said he basically wasn't going for it, but the thing that came to mind is like, yeah, like that guy's a soldier, but that dude has the heart of a hero. They didn't obviously articulate that, but the look on his face, acting without saying anything, told that whole story. And of course, in the next scene, he basically articulates that too, Steve. He's basically like, listen, like I just want a good man at heart and never lose that. And that's something that I apply not because of this movie, but just ideals that I personally have that I apply that to myself, which I really resonate with that scene. So I really, really appreciate that. And then again, that whole scene, those two scenes for me sum up everything about Cap that we see from start to finish.
Yeah, Rashawn, that's a great point. It becomes a theme throughout that it's Captain America. Really, what makes Steve Rogers special is his heart. It's what he believes. It's who he is, right? Like you can add the muscle later on, as they prove, but you can't change what's inside. Mm-hmm. My next point on here was the Dr. Erskine. I love it, Stanley Tucci's performance. In particular, one thing I just wanted to mention here, because I know we'll circle back to him, is his discussion as he's sitting down with Rogers on the night before the procedure's done, and they're talking about Hitler and fantasy, and how that's really the difference between Hitler and Red Skull. Is, you know, it's a theme we talked about on our Thor MCU show, is that it's magic until it becomes science almost, right?
I was thinking about that.
That's what we're kind of figuring out. Like this world is quickly becoming a universe where all these people are just act with some of the technology that they can develop. And I thought that was a really nice commentary on what separated those two guys. And it was important for Red Skull's character, because what would make him anything, you know, you have Hitler, who's the ultimate bad guy. But that was a nice way to kind of separate those two a little bit. The dance between Steve and Agent Carter that they talk about. Obviously, that becomes a nice little common theme throughout the Captain America movies, all the way up until the chilling end of Avengers Endgame. So sweet that we had to wait all that time, but you know we eventually get it. The quote, "Cut off the head and two shall take its place," becomes a Hydra mantra throughout. Very important. And the last note that I had is during the Captain America kind of promo tour, when he becomes Captain America, not the hero, but really the stage guy, they mention all the cities, and Buffalo is the first one to get a shout out. Probably because Christopher Marcus, who co-wrote this, is from Buffalo, New York. Uh-huh. Now, Christopher Marcus co-wrote this with Stephen McFeely. They did Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, and they did the two Captain America movies after this. So pretty awesome. You know, we're a bunch of guys here from Buffalo, New York. If you don't know and you're watching or listening to our show here, that's a nice little mini common thread. It's a nice little thumbs up for our area.
It's always
I think you're right. I think the writing has something to do with it, but also, I mean, at that time, Buffalo was, you know, considered, you know, a major city, not anymore, unfortunately, but to some degree, it was a bigger city back then than it is now. So yeah, it's not like it's forced.
I love it so much. Anything Buffalo, I'm sure you guys are the same way. I'm always like, yeah,
it's us.
Yeah, that's it.
We did
that's
it.
us.
Del, isn't that your Twitter banner? The Buffalo?
That's mine, and it's been on and off forever. Yeah, and I think I have it on Facebook. It's just so great. It's like it captures everything about like me.
Yeah.
Right? So I love Marvel, I love Buffalo. Like, let's do it.
Perfect.
So yeah, for sure, I love it.
That's funny.
I should make that a shirt.
Yeah, there we go.
I think you should.
Yeah.
That, like I said, that's all I had for notes here. Another nice little tidbit: if you're looking for more Captain America, go to thegeekiverse.com. We've got a nice series that we wrote up in the lead up to Infinity War, but it still rings true. It was called Some Assembly Required. Some fun facts about the movie, a quick synopsis, and we talk about a few other things there. But favorite non-Captain America character? Why don't we go there? There's a nice cast of characters to choose from here. Whether it's a hero or a villain. I think we'll have some different responses here, and I could make an argument for a lot of them.
Yeah, I
But
think
why don't
this is
we?
the best supporting cast of phase one
So far.
I would say.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with that.
For sure.
I think that's fair to say. Rashawn, why don't we start with you? Who's the favorite non-Captain America character in the film, if you could just pick one?
Oh man. I would say. Listen, I always gotta respect the ladies, man. So I'm gonna go with Peggy. I'm gonna go with Peggy. There's a lot here, but I'll leave that to the rest of you fellas. I'll go with her, and the reason why, again, I think this is the romantic in me, going back to how I feel about Tony and Pepper. But I just like how he was like, she becomes a lot of the inspiration for him. Like, of course, like, you know, you see in the beginning, like he goes on the date with Bucky or whatever, and the girl's not paying him any attention or anything like that. But I think when Peggy and Steve first have that conversation, even though I don't know if the relationship works, to be honest, if he doesn't become Captain America physically. But I do think that they made it a point in multiple scenes, by the way she looks at him, that he piqued her interest just based on who he was, and the conversation again they had in that car ride, the little bit of dialogue they had before the procedure, that caught her eye, and just seeing that thread, and again the dance. I mean, come on, you know, that was something that was sweet. I love the way she got upset when he got caught kissing the other girl, and then with the shield as a
Awesome.
as a girl should. Hey, does this work? Oh, I don't know. Let's see. And then she actually just shoots
Fires it off.
That's great. And then they both just look at Stark and Steve just look at her and are just like, what the? And I think they looked at it and like, oh, that's a sexy kind of way. I don't think they looked at it like, oh my god, this girl's crazy. I think they looked at it like,
all right,
oh, I want more of that. And so and I don't blame them. Haley Atwell's a beautiful lady, but yeah, man. I like their dynamic. It obviously makes sense why we didn't get more of it, you know, obviously for story reasons. But again, the way that, you know, the MCU as we know it today is, you know, quote unquote wrapped up, quote unquote, it ends on them, which is so sweet for all of that. So we talk about it with every show, but how that comes full circle to close things out for now. So
yeah, I think
we mentioned it on Pluscast. I just finally a few weeks ago watched my first few episodes of Agent Carter.
I like Agent Carter. I was upset when that got canceled. I understand why, but you know.
Yeah, I really, really have enjoyed the episodes I've seen so far. I'm long overdue to see it. John, you had a point.
Yeah, I was just gonna say they do a really good job of making her, not that he needs it, but she's his moral compass in this film. Like every time he starts to stray a little bit, Peggy always comes back and just reminds him of what he's really there for. There's like 3 or 4 different beats where he kind of just starts, whether it's succumbing to rage or doing X, Y, or Z. She always kind of pops back into the picture and just like lights that spark. It's like, this is what we're here for. So she is that moral compass, and that works really well.
And the thing that separates her for me too, that I love, she ain't no pushover. I mean, the series will tell you that, Agent Carter will tell you that, but out of all the romantic interests that we've got so far, I know, you know, spoiler alert, Pepper gets her moment a little bit later, but present day where the MCU was, listen, she'll squirrel with you too. Like, don't think you can mess with her and get away scot-free. You got to deal with Cap, and then you got to deal with her too. So I did appreciate that she wasn't just another damsel in distress character. She could actually defend herself and handle herself in combat situations well if needed.
Had she been alive in the story in Endgame, I would have had her right at the front of that all-female centric moment.
Oh yeah,
I think. Yeah, to John's point, moral compass. I think that's awesome. But you know, behind every good man, right, or every relationship, there, you know, you're there to steer your partner on, and that's kind of the beginnings of what we see. Unfortunately, the relationship, you know, ends in a way there, but it endures in other ways throughout the MCU. Del, why don't we go to you next? Favorite non-Cap character?
Yeah, for me, it's Dr. Erskine. I mean, the movie starts out and it's the U.S., you know, versus Germany in World War II and everything, and very quickly it becomes not the U.S. versus Germany, but good versus evil. I mean, Erskine's quote for me was just like it hits me like a ton of bricks when he says it. He says people forget that the first country the Nazis invaded was their own, and because automatically when Cap hears, I'm sorry, when Steve, he's not Cap yet. When Steve hears that accent, you can tell he's like taken aback a little bit when he hears that German accent. But I think Erskine does just such a great job of just articulating that, in just such a way like, oh wow, like we're all humans, we're all kind of in this together when it comes to fighting evil, no matter where we live. And that's why I think they did a great job of that, taking such a Captain America, such a very specific name for a superhero that would kind of alienates the rest of the world. I'm talking about from a real world marketing perspective. Why does somebody in Europe want to go watch Captain America? Or, so they do a really good job of, for those that went to see it, falling in love with the character. So that's why part of the reason why I think he becomes more and more popular, because it's not just about, he can be Captain Good. It's kind of a dumb name, but that's really, who he is. And then also Erskine is Steve's Yinsen, right? And he's, or his Uncle Ben, or however you want to look at it. Yeah. All these superheroes have a tragic character, but that helps, them become who they are. But, that the fact that while he couldn't speak, his final, motion or whatever, his final idea he gets across is he points at Steve's heart.
Beautiful. That was so beautiful.
Gosh. He's such a, and that's Stanley Tucci, right? Like he nails it, no matter what role he's in, whether he's that crazy host from Hunger Games, or he's,
I forgot about that,
right? Or some German doctor on the run from his old country. Like it's just he just nails it, and so I think Erskine is such an important character in this, and there's so many, like it was said, it's such a great supporting cast, but he has my vote.
If you listen to some of the things he says, like I don't know how much screen time he had, probably in total, 10 minutes. He spits the most facts out of that 5 to 10 minutes that you will ever hear in any in any comic book movie. If you just listen to the things that he says, you can apply that stuff in so many different ways, and it explains why Steve Rogers is just awesome, man.
Very impactful for sure, and I would agree with Del. I think that would be my choice, but I'll pick someone else to make it a little interesting after I get to John. But with Erskine, I think there's so many meaningful moments, and Del, you hit on a lot of them, especially his ending. He didn't have to say anything to be such an impactful character, and he just pointed at the whole reason that Steve Rogers is going to become Captain America, and it's because of his heart. And I like some of the finer humor moments with him. Like when he offers him a drink and he goes, no, you have procedure tomorrow. And he takes it. I do not.
He tried getting him to wait, and he was like, I don't wait. He's like,
drink it tomorrow. I'll drink it now.
I don't have to wait.
He's like, did you save me any of that schnapps? He's like, not a lot.
Not as much as I should have.
Think about yourself being like, if you can, in Roger's shoes there. Like, that's a very scary moment to be going into something like that is so unknown. Like, you could die. It could be really, really bad. I feel like Dr. Erskine really would be the guy to put you at ease.
Yeah.
And he did with little moments like that. Like, not as much as I should have. That's great.
Awesome.
Or when he's asked where he's from when we first meet him. I don't remember what he says from his American city or state.
Somewhere in
New
York,
says,
yeah.
And before that, Germany. So because when you're asking him, you're assuming he's gonna say I'm from Germany, but he's saying where he is from in America. And then so these little touches that make this character so endearing, so awesome. John, what character?
Yeah, I'd echo all that. I think Erskine would have been my pick as well. Great character, echo everything there. But I'll go with Colonel Phillips, Tommy Lee Jones. I love his character. I think
that's where I was going.
Yeah, sorry. I think he brings the right amount of tension. It's not too much where you hate him. I think so many of those times you'll get those characters where like, all right, you're the friction here, and there's nothing redeeming about you, and I'm really sick of this. So like, just get off the screen. We get it. We need to have some roadblocks here. I think that Tommy Lee Jones does a great job of just giving a little bit. He's the friction, but he always just gives a little too. He's always kind of willing to see like, all right, what's this kid up to? What is this duo up to? And in the end, he's full on ally. I just love the way his character is portrayed throughout the film.
Yeah, that character is often forgotten in the MCU. I mean, it's understandable. He's just in the one movie, but I love Tommy Lee Jones. Just the things he says. when he's talking to Erskine at first when seeing Rogers. What does he say? He says he makes me want to cry, or he
Something
breaks
like
my
that.
heart.
If you stick a needle in him, it's going. Something about if you stick a needle in him, it's going straight out.
Right through.
the other way.
Yeah, there's two lines
Go
there.
right through.
No, but he said if he makes you want to cry, I think you're right.
It just gets me so, like, okay, yeah, that's hysterical.
Yeah.
And then the one guy was like, "Someone give that kid a sandwich."
Yeah,
that was one of them. My favorite,
exactly.
My favorite Phillips line is right at the end when they're doing the chase down on the hangar. He's like, "I'm not gonna kiss you." I love that. I was in hysterics last night watching that.
So a lot of people complain, not a lot of people, but two people that I know that complain about some of the humor in the MCU where they feel like it cheapens the movie. I got to say that I think the MCU, throughout the MCU, the vast majority, they find a way to interweave that humor without taking out the intensity or the importance of a moment. And that's why it's so special. They find that line between being goofy and being whimsical, I think. And that's an example of it.
For sure. And I think in this specific case, it points towards the casting and the acting. Like that could have easily not been the right time for that line, but Tommy Lee Jones just comes in and crushes it.
He's a pro.
Yeah.
Him, probably last thought on Tommy Lee Jones, when he's sitting down with Red Skull's second in command. I don't remember that doctor's name.
Zola?
Yes.
Arnim Zola.
When he's sitting with them, I do like that one-on-one sequence as well.
Oh,
even just like talking about the steak, and he's like, "What's in it? Cow."
Every time I see him eat that steak, man, I want steak. Every time I watch this movie, he's just like, man, he makes that steak look so good, man.
What's weird is I was watching it and I was like, I should get a glass of milk. Just an amazing cast of characters here. I'm not going to pick anyone else because that was my other. You all three of you took the three I would have taken, so we're going to leave it at that. I think.
Oh, that's kind of messed up.
I got no one else, and I'm not taking Zola. Zola. Stanley's appearance plays a U.S. veteran where Cap is kind of on his tour. And that was a laugh out loud moment for me right in the middle of the movie. And then Nick Fury is in the post-credit scene, which is really not so much post-credit scene.
Yeah, that's just the end of the movie. They didn't even cut to anything. Yeah, there was no title or anything. That was just the last scene.
The post-credit scene for this was just a trailer.
It's a promo for the Avengers, right?
Yeah.
The very end there. So, interesting stuff there. Any other notes before we get on to kind of the final portion of this that we haven't covered yet?
I love the end only because I'm gonna bring it back to my pick about Peggy being my favorite supporting character in the movie. Is that I'm gonna say I can imagine, but I really can't. Like waking up 70 years later, you know, and I like how they try to put him in his own setting to make him feel at ease, and he just automatically calls BS on it. But then he goes
to that baseball game, like of all things.
Yeah. Of all right, exactly.
Fair
like
how
do they pick the one thing that anyway, he bulldozes out of there. Of course, he's in the middle of New York looking in modern day, which is kind of cool to see after seeing the entire movie in the 40s. And then the first thing he says, like, hey, like Nick Fury's like, you gonna be all right? It's just like, man, I had a date. Like,
yeah,
that's good.
like not like, because I've had that moment where like you oversleep or something, and then you look an hour later, oh my God, I'm late for such and such. And I actually was late for a date once by 30 minutes because of something like that. Imagine being 70 years late for a date. The girl you finally want that you get is, oh man, you gotta, wake up 70 years later.
It's part of the irony of the character in a way, right? Like,
and that's the first thing you thought of too, which is sweet as well.
Yeah, that's a great way. And think how jarring that is to look around and see all of the skyscrapers and the lights and the TVs everywhere, the cars. Oh my goodness.
Times Square, very different.
Totally different world decades later. Like insane.
Yeah.
One thing I did fail to get to here. Does anyone, everyone have that moment, that one moment that stands out to you? We probably already covered it in anything that we talked about here. I think if I had to isolate one myself, it's probably the moment when Erskine is dying, when he points to Cap, because it's so meaningful when he points to his chest and implies, you're all heart. This is why you were chosen. Anyone want to go first if they've got a moment that comes to mind that really stands out from this film?
Yeah, well, so this is kind of like a bigger, I don't know, theme and just big piece of the movie, and it's also really prevalent in the first two. I'm not going to include Hulk because it doesn't really apply to this, but in Iron Man and in Thor as well, the choreography they did with these characters, the first time Cap fights with that shield, just the moves and the choreography, the way he bounces it, the way we feel the weight of that shield. Like, I remember for the first time seeing that and just being blown away, like, oh man, like, I never thought a shield could be a cool weapon. And then he's just bouncing that thing around, and it's just so cool. And they did the same thing with Thor's hammer, and then with just Iron Man in general. I think that was such a cool. We never really got that in superhero movies before the MCU. It's like everybody is so unique, and these characters are so well choreographed that, like, I don't know, they're all so different but also cool.
Yeah, John, it really. I had that note and erased it because I figured it'd be brought up. In the way that Thor, the movie, established the dynamic and the sound and the look of how his hammer flies through the air or takes out an enemy, it really did that a lot with Cap's shield in this too. And they of course mentioned that it's vibranium, which is another wonderful nod to Black Panther many years later.
I was gonna save it, but since we're talking about the shield, that is actually, out of all things, that is my one negative of the movie. You don't throw the shield enough.
Not enough. Okay.
Not enough. I think one time years ago, I actually did count the numbers between 9 and 11. If I didn't count this time, but it's between 9 and 11, I believe. And then just a little, we do our little nuggets for the future. You see, they address that right away in the future installments of Captain America. You can't even count how many times he throws the shield. So that was the one negative I had. I'm like, everything's great, but I'm like, he could have threw the shield more. And then coming from Thor and seeing that, to what you guys are talking about, how they really established that dynamic between Thor and his weapon, I feel like they could have did that just a little more with Cap and the shield. But that's a nitpick, I think, in retrospect. But
it's worth it, worth mentioning. Rashawn, what about that moment for you? That moment in the movie that stands out or is memorable?
I co-sign with you on any of the how do you say his name? Erskine.
Erskine.
I co-sign with you on any of the stuff with him. I think for me, as silly as it may be, I don't know. I wonder how many people comment if you actually like the Captain America song. Because I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I've jammed out to that song a couple of times back in the day. I am not. I may or may not have watched the entirety of the credits recently when I'm watching this just to listen to that song. Because normally I would just fast forward to the end credits, but I may or may not have actually watched just to listen to the Captain America tune. So for me, again, in combination with the Buffalo stuff, I can't help but jam out to that.
It's a good answer.
I respect it.
Del, that moment in the movie for you.
Again, I have to go back to Erskine. Not a perfect soldier, but a good man. I think that's the scene. I think it's great, and I like when he's holding up the garbage can lid.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know if that's the scene, but I really love that scene, and all the stuff he shares with Bucky just resonates a lot later on once you see Winter Soldier, and all the other interactions. But yeah, anything with Erskine I think is great. He's such an impact, on this movie and on Cap, and he's great.
So kind of final wrapping thoughts before we get to our rankings here. That's one thing I feel like we didn't really talk about a lot, and I could have mentioned even as a secondary character, but Bucky Barnes, their dynamic, their friendship, he becomes very, very prominent throughout the MCU and is really a sticking point as we get to Civil War. But it's funny looking back at their relationship and how it kind of evolved through the movies and as we got to Winter Soldier. I think back and like maybe I was just an idiot. I did not know that Winter Soldier was Bucky Barnes before Winter Soldier.
I didn't either, and quite frankly, as in depth I was with comics, and storylines. Again, I despise Captain America, so I had no idea.
I had no prior knowledge of that. Even watching the trailer didn't occur to me until I was actually sitting in theaters, and I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Same.
that's who that is." But Bucky Barnes and their relationship, it's another point where we've got depth for Cap's character. So Steve and Peggy, like that's one reason he does what he does. That's one reason he fights. As John mentioned, it's the moral compass. Bucky is really another one and kind of a pain point as we get into some of the other movies, especially Civil War, right? And then these are best friends who are fighting throughout Winter Soldier. So there's a lot of layers to that relationship and what comes of Bucky Barnes. If anyone has some comments on their relationship, the dynamic, or just the character in general. Why don't we start with John?
I'm glad. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, start with John. Go
No,
ahead.
no, you're good.
Sorry,
I don't have much on Bucky. You covered it. I'm good.
Okay, Rashad.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think the Bucky character gets a lot of flack. I don't really get it. Again, he's not meant to be Iron Man or Thor or anything like that. He's meant to be obviously a supporting character, but I think he gives Cap so much motive throughout every single movie that they're in together. That I think, like I talk about how Peggy is a lot of that moral compass. Man, Bucky is his rock, man. Like, and you see that throughout more so in the future movies. Like, I wouldn't say this movie is like, oh, Bucky, yeah. I think I feel more that way towards the Winter Soldier, obviously, and future installments. But I personally do think the Bucky character gets some unnecessary flack. Is he meant to do anything spectacular? No. But he is meant to be that rock for arguably the most important character in the MCU, and I think he successfully does that.
Even aside from the fact that Sebastian Stan looks like a young Mark Hamill in many ways, I think
Don't get me started. Don't get me started on my fan theories.
I think there's a lot of fun Star Wars dynamic there. Where, him and they're best friends, and it reminds me whether you look at Anakin and Obi-Wan, or even a character like Anakin or Ben Solo going to the dark side and eventually being redeemed in a way. Really like where that went in Winter Soldier. Del, any kind of closing thoughts on Bucky or the relationship at all?
I think Bucky's just a good tool to illustrate Steve's loyalty. You know, and we don't see that in this movie per se, but I'm with you to the end of the line and all of that.
One of the best scenes.
Thank you. Special delivery. I just had to text my family and say, hey, my battery's about to die.
Oh, nice.
So,
good stuff.
And it's not in my backpack, my charger. So if I'm gone, I apologize, guys.
Fair enough.
It's all good. We'll get right to it. John, let's why don't we get to ranking this thing?
Yeah, let's do it. Ranking. We got the image up here.
Depending on what y'all say here, we might have to fight.
Really?
We'll see. I think we're gonna be in agreement, but we might have to fight.
You think we're gonna be in agreement?
We'll see.
Right
now,
or
at least in the realm of agreement.
Right now we have current rankings: Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Thor, The Incredible Hulk. Where someone throw out a spot? Where do you think we start with this one?
It should be number 2. It shouldn't be lower than 2. I would say.
All right, let's start.
So Iron Man.
Yeah.
Go with John.
Let's start with it ahead of The Incredible Hulk. We all like it better than Hulk, right?
Yes.
Yep.
We all like it better than Thor?
I do.
Yes.
Yes. Me as well. Do we like it better than Iron Man 2?
I
no.
do. Oh, man.
We're split again.
John's gonna go with Iron Man. I
don't. Yeah, I think this is and it sucks. I'm also the deciding vote again. It looks like, but I think it's a good origin story. I think it's a very fun movie, but I don't think it touches what Iron Man does in any of the Iron Man movies to me. I think it's solid. It introduces Cap. Cap is much better in all of his movies to come. I think Iron Man is just Iron Man in every movie we get. So I would not put it ahead of Iron Man 2.
So Del, what is your thought on this?
I love Iron Man. I love it so much. It kicked off the MCU and it's so great. And Robert Downey Jr. kills it. And I hate it, but just this is.
So you would have this number 1?
Yeah, I would say number 1.
Oh, okay.
Number 1.
I like it.
they did so much. They balanced so much with the period film and all of the thematic elements about being a good person and good versus evil, and it just the cast. It's great. I don't think it's not gonna be my number one next week. If I happen to join you guys, I'll just be real. But
Sure.
no spoilers. But it's so much. There's so much they had to juggle to make this movie.
Preach, brother, preach.
They did it. They did it. And so I love Iron Man so much. I could watch it every day for the rest of my life. I enjoy it. But this is number one for me.
Man.
Yeah, I like it. It's very respectable.
I respect it too. I see it. It just Cap didn't do that for me back then, and even just rewatching that, I didn't get the full Cap experience that I'm used to, and that I get out of these later Cap movies, and especially the ensemble movies. It doesn't touch what Iron Man did for me. So unfortunately, it stays at 3 behind Iron Man 2.
If you guys think this is controversial, wait until 2 weeks from now when we get to Iron Man 3. Just wait. I'm going to deliver some hot takes that the internet is not ready for.
Just I am ready for it. I'm ready for it. All right.
Like, part of me wants to.
If you are at home, let me tell you, it's going to get ugly and beautiful all at once.
So wait. So this would be placed at 3, John, because we're saying it's voted that it's not better than Iron Man 2.
Correct. Yeah. So the current ranking would be Iron Man 2, Captain America,
now,
Thor, Incredible Hulk.
Rashawn, you have 3 snaps left.
Listen, man.
Do it. Use your snap.
Honestly, I'll say this. I don't want him to use it, but I feel like
he could win that.
That is a definitely winnable one.
Yeah, I think I think our conversation is pretty much what you'll get out there. I think it's going to be pretty split. And I wouldn't be surprised if more people, especially in the light of how far the characters come when they just see that poll. I wouldn't be surprised if you do win that, but interesting.
Yeah. So we'll get into our wrap up here, and Rashawn, right before the end, we'll reveal if you want to use it or not,
let's do this. No, give me because we can do snaps later.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, give me a week to think about if I want to use a snap or not, because that'll be the snap to end phase 1 if I decide to do it. So let's give it a week. Let's let it marinate.
Because you might have
That's fair.
You might have to snap it ahead of Iron Man 3 next week. Just saying.
Man, that's not next week. That's 2 weeks from now.
Well, I mean next time. We're talking Iron Man.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's getting juicy, folks.
I'm so excited.
All right, we want to hear from you, the listener. Where does Captain America rank so far in your MCU rankings?
Let me just tell y'all something right now. Cap is in the middle of them posters behind me for a reason.
He's in the middle of our rankings, so it's appropriate.
Technically, Iron Man's in the middle, but Cap is he's in the forefront. He's the biggest character that you see in those posters. That's for a reason.
Hey, that's fine. But this movie is not better than Iron Man 1 or 2. I'm sorry.
Agreed. I love that so much.
Next week. I'll see y'all next week.
As we mentioned, we'll have to proportionally start leaving more time for this at the end, because this is going to get really, really fun really fast. Avengers might not be so controversial, but I'm telling you, Iron Man 3, it's going to get fun.
I'm excited.
So you are either watching the video at youtube.com/thegeekiverse, on our website at thegeekiverse.com, or listening to it in podcast form on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Google Play, or any major streaming podcast service. We're very excited that you took the journey with us today. We'll wrap things up with it where everyone is on social media, and give a quick plug for our sponsor for the show. So Del, just in case we lose you here, I will cover for you. But the show is presented by Fantastic, a division of 26 Shirts, some of our best friends here in Western New York. Del, where can people find you on social media, and give your quick elevator speech for why you do what you do at Fantastic?
Yeah, so Fantastic is, like you said, a division of 26 Shirts. And the whole purpose behind what we do is we try to sell T-shirts to people who love things, right? And so most of our stuff, it's, as you mentioned, they're one of our popular ones, correct? We're based in Buffalo, so most of our stuff that we offer through 26 Shirts is Buffalo based, but our Fantastic line is more of like a national type brand that we offer, and it's the same motivation. Just people love stuff and people love to help, so we try to marry those two ideas together. And so at fantastic.com, you can check out a bunch of cool geek related gear, and if you happen to be from Buffalo or Chicago or Pittsburgh, just go to 26shirts.com and you can see some other sports related designs there. But we've been around for about 6.5 years, and we've raised over $760,000 so far just because so many people believe in what we do, and we enjoy doing it.
Yeah, some of the best people you'll ever meet, folks. Go check them out at 26shirts.com/fantastic. Of course, we'll put some links out there as well. Be a part of doing good in the world and getting these guys to $1 million, because that would be pretty awesome. Every dollar counts. So, Disruptoid. I just gave away where everyone can find you.
That's it. At Disruptoid. That's all I need to know. That's all I got, legit.
I know. Usually I think about like the next thing I'm going to say, and then I kind of like screwed it up myself. Rashawn, where can people find you? What's going on at the Geekiverse, buddy?
Yeah, man. In terms of Geekiverse shows, you can catch me here every week, MCU Re-Viewed. You can catch me on our bi-weekly gaming podcast, Geeks Got Game. You can also catch me on our monthly Disney Plus podcast, where we discuss Disney Plus news and content. In terms of things outside of the Geekiverse, you can find me on Twitter and Twitch at True King Zero. So if you are a gamer, you can catch me on Twitch. And if you just want to see everything we talk about here, just in text format, follow your boy on Twitter.
Wow, look at that.
And look at the sleight of hand he just had.
That's good stuff right there. Professional. I've never seen one.
I was like, what's happening?
I was gonna keep going, but then he had the sleight of hand. But that's where you can find me. Oh man, that was great.
Oh man, good job, Dale. We just got it in like perfect time for you, like giving your plug and then moving on. So that was good. All right. So I am at Josiah D. Leroy all over the Geekiverse, all over social media. We've got so many wonderful things going on. This is the end of our anniversary month. By the time you're seeing this, it's been an incredible 6th anniversary month. We're celebrating with a few last things. First of all, which you can buy in our online store by the time you're listening and watching this, our 6th anniversary t-shirt. There it is if you're watching the YouTube version.
So cool, man.
One more time right there. Limited edition. Once they're gone, they're gone. So get your hands on that soon. And we did do a bonus shirt because the Marvel series that we're doing here, the MCU Re-Viewed, it sounds like you guys like it. You Geekiverse fans are really supporting it big time. It's one of our most well-received shows ever, and we're so thankful for you in taking this adventure together. Here's the bonus shirt, everybody. We are Groot. You got to get your hands on that because we are Groot. Am I right?
We are.
Next week, boys, Avengers.
One of the big ones.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. I'm excited just to watch it. It's been a while, actually.
I haven't seen it. It's been maybe 2-3 years, which is crazy. I used to watch that movie yearly or monthly.
It's been like 2 months for me. That's what I mean by it's been a while.
It's been 2 days for John. That's how long it was. And that is a very important movie in the MCU. It is the one that launched this thing to stardom, was a gateway movie for a lot of people, such as myself. Here we are all these years later, still obsessing over it. Can't wait to watch it again. And in a funny way, look at how epic I thought it was in 2012 and how it doesn't scratch the surface in a way of a movie like Infinity War or Endgame in terms of scale. So we hope you'll take that journey with us as well. For Del, for John, and Rashawn, I'm Josiah. We will see you guys next week for the MCU Reviewed.